guess as a manager, this is a difficult period, isn't it, in terms of balancing, preparing for games, keeping minds focused, and having to deal with all of this on top of it.
Yeah,
as well.
yeah, it is. There's no denying it. Any manager will tell you it's always a tricky period. You know, your season's starting. You're trying to get focused, and you spend your summer creating this really powerful collective unit that's hopefully going to see you through the season, and then obviously throughout this period. Then of course there's lots of speculation, and you have to remember these are very, very young guys, some of them, and for some of their times it's the first time they've experienced these situations. So there is always and can be disruption there, but the idea is really to try and keep the group as focused. You know perfectly well the minute the window shuts, it all ends, and everyone is really there. But whilst we're in this period, there's always challenges.
With 2 weeks to go, then, are you confident that Wesley Fofana will still be a Leicester City player once the window closes?
I don't think so. You know, so far ahead. I think the idea is that he's still very much a Leicester City player. You know, the club. Like I've said it a number of times here, he's not for sale, and the club have made that clear that that's the case. So unless anything changes on that, I would expect him to be here.
Any other bids for any other players?
No.
And in terms of the players you may want to move on, the fringe players who may not be involved, is there any progression there?
Nothing on that as far as I'm aware.
So that in turn means that at the moment you're not any closer to bringing any players in either?
Not at the moment, no. And as I said, the work has been with the players that's here, and we'll continue with that.
Would you describe this as a frustrating time for you as a manager?
Listen, it's one where I've said before, it's no different. I think every manager would want to have strengthened their squad, and I'm absolutely no different to all the other managers. So, but if you're unable to do it, then my experience tells me that you have to concentrate on what you have, and I've got some fantastic players here. You know, a wonderful group of players, and who want to get better. And if we can keep those fit and get some luck with no injuries, then like I say, I still think we can have a really good season. But of course, every manager wants to improve his squad, but we're not in that situation in this moment.
You talk about luck with injuries. How are things looking for this weekend in terms of your team news?
Well, Harvey Barnes is great news for us. He's been back in training, so that's really good for us. He's looked excellent. He's looked fit, and he had a really, really good pre-season. So it was a blow to lose him for the opening few games, but he should be available.
And how key is that? Because I know you were looking very much on sort of working with those wide men and the system you were looking at. So that could be key for you. Yeah,
absolutely. Well, it's always important for how we play, the width in the game. We've always tried to be flexible in terms of how we play and have that adaptability. But of course, when you're limited on the certain profile of winger, then of course when he was out, we had to adjust. So and the players, listen, they're very adaptable and they can adjust really well.
What's been your message this week after that disappointing result against Arsenal? Coming into this game, how crucial is this game, and what has your message been to your players?
Well, it's very important. It was the same as after the last game. I said afterwards it was a mixed bag with some good moments in the game. Where Arsenal could have went in front in the opening 5 minutes, but didn't. And then I think the timing of the goals really hurt us last week. There's no doubt Arsenal deserved to win, but we could have made it a much closer scoreline and made them a little bit more nervous than we did. So we have to come away, learn from that, got to manage the game better, look to not make mistakes in the games, knowing that we can score goals. Okay.
Hi, Brendan.
Hi.
Just picking up on that point James Justin said about game management and talked about perhaps being a bit more cute, I suppose, have a bit more devilment in games? Is that something that can be worked on, has been worked on?
Well, there's that, and there's also managing the ball. You know, if you know, the last goal came from us giving away the football, and it's something that with the team it's a constant message. You know, we don't always have to put the ball at risk. You don't always have to finish the action on the first attack. You know, so that's just something that when I talk about experience of players, that conserving the ball in the right moments is about having game experience. So that's something that we can definitely do better, and that's part of managing the game.
James Maddison obviously likes to put the ball at risk, and he's having a brilliant time of it at the moment. Just looks like he's brimming with confidence, and again, just touching on what James said to us, he actually thinks he's got another level in him, which is quite scary.
Yeah, he's continued on really from where he was at the end of last season. Over the course of pre-season, he looks strong, looks dynamic, and he's created a goal and scored a goal already this season. So now he's a wonderful player, and like I said, he plays the game with the personality and the charisma that you want. You know, it doesn't matter what stadium he goes into. He goes and he can play at the very highest level, and thankfully his game's at that level.
What sort of personality do you want to see from your team this weekend back in front of you? Fans, Southampton, and the opponents, what do you want to see?
Yeah, well I want to see us back playing with that intensity and that aggression and that pressure that has defined us. That's something that when we've been very, very good, that's our game. So we'll be judged this year on that, on our intensity and how we play and the aggression. And if we can play to that level, then we've shown that we can get good results consistently.
And just finally from me, you said ahead of Arsenal they'd gone up a bit of a level this season. What do you make of Southampton and the challenge that they offer you?
Yeah, it's always a difficult game against Southampton. We had a good scoreline at the end of last season, but again they made some new signings and freshness in the squad. Obviously, they showed their spirit last week when they came back from being behind at home. So now we'll expect a tough game, but the onus is on us. We played 60 odd minutes of our last home game to a good level, and then end up giving away the points. So 2 weeks further on, we want to show that improvement. We want to play with the same quality and intensity, but manage the game and hopefully take 3 points. Thank you.
Thank you, Rob. Jason?
Hey, Brendan.
Hi, Jason.
Okay. After the Arsenal game, you were asked about conceding so quickly after scoring and responded with this, and I quote, "It's a lack of experience from a number of players in our team that aren't used to the level." Can you just clarify what you mean by that? Because, you know, looking at the team that you named, it was a very experienced team, 9 full internationals, winners' medals in the FA Cup and Premier League in there. So what did you actually mean by are at this level?
Yeah, I meant that we've got numbers of players. If you look at, you can call James Justin, for example, a full international player, but I think it's probably only his second season. You look at Kane Dewsbury Hall, the level. You can talk about James Maddison. So all these players, they're not overly experienced. Yeah, you can look at Johnny Evans and say he's very experienced, but we're talking about experience of the game, managing games. That's what I was referring to.
In that same interview on Saturday, I think you also talked about the need to keep the ball better. I know you just mentioned it there. Have the players not learned from this? Because if you remember the Spurs defeat last season, scoring 2 goals pretty late on, you described it as naive after that game. And also they're not learning from the mistake of the first goal of the weekend as well. Why does this seem to be happening on a regular, well, not on a regular basis, on occasions?
Yeah, it can happen in football. I think it's, especially after you score, if you look at it, it's the most vulnerable time in a game. We've worked it the other way, a number of goals last season. If you think back to when we conceded away at Leeds, we virtually went up the other end and scored. So sometimes as a team you're at your most vulnerable when you've scored. It's difficult when you're the team that has just scored and got yourself back into the game. And sometimes it's mistakes, which is a part of the game also. When we got to 2-1, we were in good shape, we were comfortable, and unfortunately we conceded the third goal, which broke the sort of momentum a little bit. The players fought back really well, got back into it for 3-2, and then it sets you up really well. And it was a period of the game that we'd highlighted beforehand, that final half hour. If we're in the game, we've got a great opportunity to get a result, but we then give the ball away, and that's obviously at the highest level that you can get punished with really, really good players. So it's something that you always want to learn, and you can learn, but sometimes it's also the game, especially after you've scored a goal. So the idea is to show that we have learned in our next game, and like I said, just manage the situation better.
Of the 4 permanent signings you've made last summer, only Patson Daka has featured so far. You mentioned Buba Samare in past press conferences. I think we know the situation with Ryan Bertrand with his injury as well, and Yannick Vestergaard isn't playing. Do you believe Leicester's permanent transfer dealings last summer were a success?
Well, I think that what we've looked at, the players that came in, Yannick was coming in as a cover player for us. That's the reality. We obviously lost Wesley, and Yannick was very clear on his role in terms of we still had Johnny Evans and with Cags in front of him, Daniel Amarty. So he was coming in as a fourth choice centre half to come in and support. Ryan was coming in as an experienced player to take the role of Christian Fuchs, and Christian was a cover player for us. Unfortunately for Ryan, he hasn't been able to stay fit, so he's been unable to play so much. Buba Samare again was a player that came into the squad, and I said it clearly here that he was going to be that hybrid between Wilf and Yuri, meaning that if either one of those maybe wasn't playing, that he would have the opportunity to come in and play. Those guys were still the starters. So and then obviously, like you say, Patson has had more game time. So I think it's a fair question, but I think it's also a fair answer to say the players that we came in were the players to come in and cover, and not necessarily starting players for us.
You say it's a fair question. I mean, I ask it because of the lack of business this summer and the inability to move certain players on. Has the inability to move some of those players maybe from last summer played a big part in not bringing everyone else in this summer?
Not just that. I think it's from before. I think it's not just last summer. It's over a culmination of a number of years. You know where the club is at. So it's unfair just to totally isolate those players and say it was the ones from last year. It's been over a number of years.
When were you told about the financial situation at the club? Because I remember obviously you talked about this refresh, whatever context that was in, but I remember sitting in the Watford press conference after you won it there talking about wanting to bring in 2 midfield players. When were you told about the financial constraints? Because either you were told before saying those things or maybe told afterwards. So when was it? Because either way, communication from the hierarchy down maybe not the best.
No, the communication here has always been very open and to myself and the board. I think when I spoke towards the February-March time of last year, it was clearly what we wanted to do was improve the squad. Towards the end of the season, there was clearly going to be issues around that, but still we go into the summer with the idea to improve. But obviously, whenever I come back for the beginning of pre-season, then it's pretty clear then that it's going to be a challenge for us. So in terms of the communication, it's open, but certainly back then I didn't envisage that we'd be in the position that we're in. So, but we're in it now, and as you know, the game and is changing all the time. So, but I said before, whenever the club say to me, and when I come back in the summer, this is where we're at. Because over the course of the summer, I was still speaking with players that we wanted to sign. Our recruitment team was, they had done some great work over these last number of months. We were very clear on the positions that we wanted to improve. And so all of that was still all going forward. And like I said, I spent my summer holiday speaking to a number of players to convince them to come. And then, of course, when we come back, the reality of the situation is there, and we're unable to follow through with it.
I'm still curious though, what changed when you came back? Because if you were talking about wanting to sign players and in conversations with players, it may be for somebody above you to discuss this, but it just seems a little strange that you're planning and then come back and it's been cut.
Yeah. So that's I don't run the finances of the club, so I'll run the football department, and if we say we can't sign a player, then I trust the club that that's the case.
Best of luck this weekend.
Thank you. Thanks.
Hi, Brendan.
Hi.
You okay?
Oh, okay.
I wondered, you said Harvey Barnes has been back in training this week. Is he available and fit enough to start this weekend, or is this a sort of staggered return to the first team for him?
No, we just decide whether he's going to be in from the start. He's looked good in training, so and he's had a really good pre-season. So he may be available to start. It may not be fully 90 minutes, but we'll assess that tomorrow in our final session.
With a winger coming in like him, does it offer you the opportunity to revert back to that 4-3-3 formation with those kind of inverted fullbacks that you had to come away from because of the injuries to Harvey and Ricardo?
Yeah, it certainly opens up that possibility when you have at least one winger that gives you that pace and speed and width in the game.
On Wesley Fofana, he is obviously very young, and I just wonder for him personally how he's dealing with the amount of talk and speculation around his future whilst he's still trying to do the everyday things of what a footballer has to do. How is he from a kind of mental state?
Yeah, mentally he's fine, but as you can imagine, 21-year-old with the spotlight on you and talking about what you maybe can earn at another club and where you can play and all these things, then it's a challenge. There's no other way. That's the honest answer with it. He's been absolutely brilliant, Wesley, since the very first day he's arrived here. Been fantastic for the club when he's played. The club really stuck by him and when he was injured, and then he's come back at the tail end of last season and showed the top young talent that he is. So but like I say, it's a challenge for any player, and in particular a young player. And but he knows he's loved here. He knows this is an important step for his career, being at Leicester City and having more development. But it's natural when other clubs are interested in you because of your talent, and especially with the money that comes with that. So it certainly makes you think, that's for sure.
Are you confident with him at the moment? It sounds like you are, that he's in the right headspace to be able to start this weekend, being around the squad and feature in this game.
Well, I'll always assess that towards the after the session. We sit down as coaches and analytical team and study the opponent, make sure that everything's there, and then we will pick the best team that we think can go out and win the game.
Okay, so if he wasn't in that right headspace, you would be obviously prepared to kind of take him out of that?
100%, because we're not a team that, if the players aren't totally focused and committed to the club and being here, or for whatever reason just aren't in the right mindset, that won't help us. And we have to ensure that everyone is really focused in order for us to play the best game that we can.
You said after the game to us on Saturday that Bouba Soumare, you didn't necessarily have an update on him, and that you'd spoken about him edging closer away from a move from the football club. Is he any closer to that deal? Is there any update there?
I've got no update for you on it, other than that Bouba's trained very professionally, trained very well. My indications were that it was going to be very close to a move. That hasn't materialised yet, but he's continued to train well, behaved really well, and like I say, we'll have to assess that.
Okay. The vice-captain at the football club, has that been decided?
Yeah. So Mark Albrighton was the choice of that from coaches, the fellow players. He was unanimous really. he typifies everything you want from a modern player. So the squad have got two real fantastic professionals that set a real standard every single day, and Johnny and Mark, with both their experiences and the level of how they commit themselves every day to the work. They'll provide a great inspiration and also a real source of comfort for the other players to know that they're there to look after them and support them.
Obviously, Mark hasn't featured too much so far this season, and I wonder for him as a player at the age he is, and maybe the contributions that he'll offer on the pitch, is as a vice captain, his experience and that kind of side of it off the pitch perhaps even more valuable.
Yeah, he's absolutely brilliant, and I've had a few of those players here now, and they've been great players. They're maybe not playing so much, but really important, figures for us outside of the field. Mark's obviously, wherever he's asked to contribute and play, he always, gives absolutely everything to the cause. And for him, he still fights and shows every single day in training that he wants to play, and I can't speak highly enough of him. He's a great guy who's got the total respect of his teammates and the total respect of all the coaches. And whether he starts, whether he's on the bench, his contribution is always invaluable to him.
Final one from me, Brendan, but I wonder, after the first two games this season, how geared up you, the coaches, the players are to really go out this weekend and I suppose prove a point and get that first win of the season. Yeah,
that was the last words I left with the squad after the game last week. It was a mixed bag, but next week we get out and let's get the first win. That's always important. The longer you leave that can become a little difficult for you. We should have won already, didn't. So now, great chance at home, get a good atmosphere in the stadium, and that's up to us in order to get the team playing to that level that gets the crowd up. And we know when we do that, then we'll hopefully have a good day.